Hey folks, how you guys doing? Hope you're all having a great day today. This is 5 quick tips or 5 things that I wish somebody would have told me as soon as I got a hand plane. Number 1 is to be a lawnmower and not a shovel. And what I mean by that is a lawnmower touches the entire surface of your lawn and reduces it by the same thickness or the same amount. And a shovel is something that's used in one specific location to dig a hole or dig a ditch. We don't want to do that with a hand plane. You want to touch the entire surface of your material, generally speaking, rather than one specific spot. The second thing is to not go crazy with downward pressure. You don't need a tremendous amount of downward pressure as you're working. If you have to really use your body in order to make this thing cut, then one of two things is happening. Either A, your blade is dull and not cutting properly, or B, you've just got too aggressive of a cut and you need to back it off a little bit. It shouldn't take, I was exaggerating there, but it shouldn't take that much pressure. It should be very easily a full motion. And as you can see there, it was the entire board like a lawnmower, not a shovel. You're not starting in one spot and just going over that same spot over and over again. The third thing is to be flat in and out and also pause in and out. And this is something that I see common to people who first pick up a hand plane is they see somebody who's used a hand plane frequently, who is relatively quick and efficient with the tool, and then the person who's never used it before just grabs it and starts going back and forth. And as you can see, they're typically not using the entire board, but also the faster you go, the less control you have over it. It's not a race. You can start, or you should start with the plane flat and the blade off the material. And if that's the case, then you need to have your downward pressure on your front hand to keep the plane level. If not, you're going to be like this. If you start with both hands putting downward pressure, then this back hand's going to be pushing down, and what you'll end up doing is creating kind of a crown in the board because you'll plane up to begin with, and as you push through, your hand is also going to be pushing down over here and taper this side down, so it kind of creates a crown. So don't do that. Instead, as you start, your downward pressure is on your front hand, and as you finish, your downward pressure is only on your back hand. Somewhere in between there, you need to transfer between your front and back hand. So start, and then pause, and then make your cut. Halfway through, transition it a little to your back hand, and then it should be your back hand finishing the cut, basically only. You know, your hand can be up here, but basically your back hand is the one that really finishes the cut. And it doesn't take much effort to just pause before you start and after you stop, and you have a lot more controlled strokes that way. The faster you are, generally speaking, the less control you're going to have. The fourth thing I wish somebody told me when I first picked up a hand plane is to use wax to lubricate the bottom of the plane. And I've seen so many people do it. I just didn't put one and one together. But yes, actually use wax. In this case, this is just a small candle, and I've had it for a couple years now, actually. And doesn't really look like I've put much use on it. So this is going to last a long time. But a couple streaks on the bottom of the hand plane really makes a huge difference in how effortless the actual plane is gliding across the wood. And as far as I know, I've never encountered somebody who said that wax has caused problems with their finish or caused problems on the surface of the material. Now, also, some people use like oil, 3-in-1 oil in a rag and a can. You may have seen this on Paul Seller's channel, and use that to lubricate the bottom of the plane. That'll do apparently the same thing, but I typically don't do that because it gets oil on the surface of the wood, which again, I've heard a lot of people say that that's never been a problem, but me personally, I prefer wax. So yes, wax makes a huge difference, and either use wax or oil to lubricate the bottom of your plane. And the fifth thing that I wish somebody would have told me when I first picked up a hand plane is to use the angle of the plane to restrict the depth. So not necessarily the angle of the blade, not that, the angle of the plane itself to restrict depth. Now what I'm talking about is this particular board right here is more narrow than the plane blade. The plane blade is wider, so it can cover the entire surface, and that's not that big of a deal. However, when you get to a wider panel, you're trying to flatten a wider panel. If I was to, for example, this is the panel. If I was to continue to plane in the forward motion, pick up, go to the next area, plane forward, go to the next area, plane forward, what I'm doing is essentially creating a series of ditches and hoping that they're at the same elevation. to maintain a more consistent depth with my cut as I traverse across this panel. Instead of planing forward, push the plane in the forward direction, but skew it like so. And when you're planing, you are using the sole of the plane to reference off of material that's not being removed, so that restricts the actual cutting depth where the material is being removed. And if you keep going across the panel like so, you will have a much more consistent depth as you go down. And again, you can take that a step further and go in this direction and then in alternating directions back and forth with the plane skewed to crisscross and kind of cancel each other out. And that's much more effective at removing high spots rather than going in the same direction with the plane as you go across the board. The sixth thing that I want to tell you, which honestly should have been the first and most important, is to always plane in the downhill direction. And if you don't know what that means, so you have this board right here and you want to plane this top surface. Which direction do you go? Do you go from this side to this side or this side back to here? So what you do is you look at the face grain on the adjacent face over here, and let's just pretend that this blue crayon is, that's just the only grain that this board has. You want to hold the board so that the grain looks horizontal, and in this case it elevates this side over here, which means you want to plane from over here to over there. This is the downhill direction. And if you plane in the uphill direction, picture a bunch of straws being held like this, and if you pull up on those straws, it's not going to be a clean, it's going to snag your finger. Whereas if you come this way, it'll just slice over the top. And that's what you want the plane blade to do. You want the plane blade to slice over the top of the grain rather than dig in and pull up. So always, always, always plane in the downhill direction. If not, you're going to get a crazy amount of tear out. So you just picked up your very first hand plane, or maybe you have 3 or 4 and just don't have a lot of use on them. Take those 6 little tips and put them in the back of your head. Just remember those as information, and put a piece of 2x4 in a vise or clamp it to a table and practice. So something that helped me out quite a bit is I would mill the top flat to remove the rounded edges or the rounded corners. And then I marked 2 adjacent lines on 2 adjacent faces as the depth stop, I guess, or the depth lines for a chamfer. Plane down to those lines so you create a chamfer, and then you know what? The top is no longer flat because you have a chamfer on one side, so plane the chamfer away by flattening the top once again. Back and forth. Chamfer the edge and then flatten the top, and then maybe plane in the uphill direction. See what that does. See if you can get some nasty tear out, just so you understand the grain direction. And then, well, you got some nasty tear out, so flatten the top so the tear out's gone. Basically, just tear up a 2x4, have fun, experiment, and see what does and doesn't work with the hand plane. That's it for this video. If you guys have any other tips, tricks, or suggestions, please leave them in the comment section below. You're going to help somebody out if you do that. And if you want to see how I set one of these planes up, then check out the link in the description for the second half of my plane restoration video. That's where I show how I set one of these up. And if you want to know how I sharpen my plane blades, I have a link for that in the description as well. You guys take care, have a great day, and I'll talk to you next time.